Welcome to the My Relationship Fell podcast, where love life blunders transform into epic comebacks. Dive into juicy stories, face tough truths, and spark powerful transformations. And now, with this week's episode, your host, Bryan Power.
Everybody, welcome to the My Relationship Fail podcast. I'm your host, Bryan Power, and I'm on a mission to help save as many relationships as possible. And today I've got a guest that's going to help us do just that, Audrey Brothers. Let me tell you a little bit about Audrey. Audrey is a certified somatic life coach, podcast host, content creator, and educator who helps people regulate their nervous systems, heal emotional patterns, and reconnect with their authentic selves. Her work focuses on guiding individuals through anxiety, heartbreak, and major life transitions by combining nervous system science, subconscious rewiring, somatic practices, and deep inner work. Through her coaching programs, content, and podcast, Audrey teaches people how to understand their emotional responses, build healthy relationships, and release the patterns that keep them stuck in cycles of overthinking, attachment wounds, and self-doubt. Her root cause approach helps people move from survival mode into a life rooted in self-trust, emotional regulation, and inner peace. Audrey shares her work with a combined audience of over 300,000 people across TikTok, Instagram, Substack, and her podcast, Advice My Friends Ignored. I love the name of that podcast, where she explores relationships, personal growth, emotional healing, spirituality, and the realities of doing deep inner work. Audrey Brothers, welcome to the My Relationship Fail podcast.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Brian. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to see you again. I was excited to be on your show last year, and it was an honor to be on that. And then I knew when I started my podcast, I said, I've got to have Audrey on here. You're just such a great personality, and I love the work that you're doing with the somatic processing stuff. I really want to learn more about that. So I'm excited to have you here on the show today to discuss that. But before we do, even though I know a little bit about you, I always like to get to know our guests a little bit better. So if you don't mind, I like to go back to the beginning. What was it like for you growing up? What was your childhood like? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, what a loaded question.
Yeah, that could be a lot, right?
Yeah. So when I think about my childhood, I born and raised Massachusetts. I grew up in a family of four. It was me, my mom, my dad, my brother. My parents were high school sweethearts, so they met when they were in high school in Medfield. Yeah, in Medfield, Massachusetts. And my brother and I are about 4 years apart. And when we were growing up, we weren't all that close, but I think as time progressed, we started to develop a deeper bond. We were very different from one another.
Yeah.
I'm more of a, let's say, spiritual kind of healer, and he's just a bit more extroverted and out there and just has a wildly different personality than me. But growing up, it was a very stable home. It was, my parents provided a lot for me. I'm very grateful to be able to look back at what I went through throughout my childhood, through high school, through college. They gave me a lot, and I'm very blessed for that. But it doesn't mean that they weren't able to, it doesn't mean that they were able to show up in the ways that I always needed. My parents they wear their heart on their sleeves is the best way I like to describe it. And so it definitely shaped a lot about how I navigate relationships, navigate conflict, which are things I'm sure we'll talk about today. But yeah, I grew up in Massachusetts, and now throughout my whole life and upbringing, I've now uprooted my life, and I'm out in Colorado now. I moved as far away from them as I could.
Oh, wow,
No, I'm
nice.
kidding, but
No. So you moved to Colorado. So how do you like it out there?
I love it. Yeah, it's definitely different. Adjusting to the altitude is quite challenging, I would say, compared to the Northeast, because it's a lot more humid there, and you're obviously closer to sea level. But here, your body works a lot harder to survive out here because of the altitude. And I heard that you age a lot faster out here because your body's working a lot faster. So
I didn't
that
know
is,
that. Interesting.
I didn't either. I'm like, I wouldn't have moved out here if I knew that.
So you mentioned that it sounds like you had a pretty good childhood. You had some parents that stayed together. They were married. Childhoods, I love that high school sweetheart stuff. I just think that's fascinating when people meet in high school and spend their whole lives together. I think that's amazing when they do that. And sounds like they were great parents, but like every people, we have our own issues and faults, and sometimes we mean well and we do things in ways that we don't realize are maybe forming our children's, behaviors and patterns that sometimes aren't healthy and hopefully mostly good, but even as good as we can. be, right? The best parents can still have kids that have some issues sometimes. And so as you began to do those patterns and began to, become an adult, you mentioned a little bit, those patterns are starting to kind of develop and play out. What was your like dating life and relationships when you started to have those as you became an adult?
Oh, they were challenging.
They were challenging.
Yeah, I would definitely say and still say I'm more geared toward an anxious attachment style when we think about attachment theory in terms of relationships. But, some of the first relationships I had were, more serious ones at least, were closer to when I was junior or senior in high school and definitely had this controlling aspect. I really wanted my partner to show up in the right ways and then he went off to college because we had a year gap between our age. He was a senior when I was a junior. And then when I was a senior, he was in college. And
Gotcha.
that just created it really opened up a big can of worms of insecurity because I was like,
Yeah.
what are you doing in college? Like all of these things. And yeah, I look back at that first relationship and if I'm being totally transparent, I was super nitpicky. I was pretty controlling. I got frustrated at a lot of things I probably didn't need to get frustrated about. And those patterns followed me for many, many years, even up until my current relationship. They've followed me, and I've had to do a great deal of inner work to not only create awareness around them, but really shift them in real time, which is where nervous system work really comes into play. But when I look at the last, let's say, 14 years of my dating life, essentially, it hasn't always been smooth sailing. I'd say most of it was pretty tumultuous. Doesn't mean I didn't have good chapters, of course. There was a
Yeah.
lot of hidden patterns of dysregulation that I did not realize until I got
Yeah.
deeper into this work.
Gotcha. And so, did you stay with one person for a long time, or did you have some multiple relationships over time, or what did that look like?
Yeah, good question. So the first two relationships, yeah, first two were shorter. I would say they were about a year. And then I was in an 8-year relationship, mostly all throughout my 20s. And now I'm in a current relationship. We've been together for almost 2 years now.
Gotcha. All right. So you started to figure it out, get a little bit longer in the 8-year thing, but at the end, it's still, still as relationships sometimes do, they fall apart at the end. Was that the relationship that caused you to start to seek the work that you do? Was it the last one, the 8-year one, or was it one of the other ones, or was it just a combination of all? Probably a combination, but all right.
Definitely a combination. But no, it was my last relationship, the 8-year one. I met him when I was 21, 22, I believe, and we stayed together until I was 29. And during that time, toward the end of our relationship, I got into coaching. So I'll take you back to tell you a little bit about the story. If we go back to around COVID time, so 2019, I believe, I started to get into coaching. I'd quit my corporate job at the time and I started to go full into coaching and got into energy healing, all of these things. I kind of fell down that slippery slope of healing
Yeah.
once I started to, dive into it. But I started coaching and at first I was just coaching on holistic wellness, nutrition, things like that. And then I want to say about a couple of years later, our relationship ended when I was 29. I moved back into my parents' house and I started to attract new clients who were going through heartbreak as well, mostly because of the content I was putting out at that time, talking about the experience of my breakup, heartbreak,
Yeah.
things like that, which really changed the clientele that I had for coaching at that time. And during that experience, I realized that there was such a common theme amongst everyone, and it was a lot of nervous system dysregulation. Everyone had these deep rooted attachment issues. They had a lot of insecurity, jealousy, toxic patterns in their relationships. And I was like, why is this happening? And then I got more into nervous system work and started to really piece it all together, which really then ended with me changing my coaching practice. I was like, I'd rather address the root cause here. I don't want to just change how people and who people are dating, right? Because a lot of times we think if we just change relationships, it's going to heal us. I've
Right.
tried that route. It never worked.
It must be the wrong person. It can't be anything I'm doing or something about me. Yeah, it's got to be the other
Yeah,
person. Yeah. Let me move on
absolutely.
and figure that out. Yeah, right.
So yeah, it's definitely not me. I refuse to
Right.
believe. No, so I switched my whole coaching practice to really focus on nervous system dysregulation, kind of pairing somatic work, subconscious work, all of it to address that root cause of the lack of safety in the body. And that's ultimately true. What really leads to attachment styles too is not having safety in our system through certain relationship patterns, right? When we go through ruptures, there is a lack of safety. When there's certain body language our partner has, maybe we start to feel activated. So all that to say, my last relationship and that split was just major catalyst for what I do today. And now I try to really help people address that root cause of dysregulation so they can not only have better relationships, but they can also stay in their relationships, right? You don't have to just abandon ship. You can work through it once you work on yourself first.
Wow, I love that's fascinating. So you were doing like dealing with heartbreaks and people breaking up and everything else, and then you've decided because of the nervous system dysregulation, that's where you discovered, hey, let's work on that, and that will help everybody's relationships a little bit better. I agree. I mean, we've got to get to the core root. Like it's all the surface stuff doesn't really help us. We've got to address the core issues, which is the core wounds, the nervous system dysregulation, and as we begin to work on that, that's when things begin to really change and move, and we're able to kind of handle things better, instead of being in that really, traumatic, dysregulated, nervous system spot when things go a little bit bad. And then we get hyper triggered and start acting in ways that are completely unbecoming. And it just feels awful when you're there too, right? It's just like the most painful, awful experience. So how did you find out, like, what did you do to learn this stuff? Like, did you go to a school for this? Like, how did you really fall? I know you transitioned to it, but how did you go from that to somatic process? And can you tell us more about the somatic nervous system? Like, what is that, and what is the difference between that and like maybe the normal nervous system, if you will?
Yeah, great questions. So I did get certified in somatic coaching to focus on the somatic safety in your body. I found that just through experience, right? I originally got certified in coaching for just general nutrition and wellness. And then I was like, you know what? I really want to get into the nervous system. I'd already been learning about it through one of my other friends who had struggled a big time in her mental health. So nervous
Hmm.
system was already a big play in her life. And I wasn't too familiar with it. If I'm being transparent, it's something that's come into my life in the last several, 3, 4 years. She introduced it to me and I just started going down these rabbit holes of like, this is so fascinating. I'm like, this is why I'm so messed up myself.
Right. Right.
I want to learn this more myself. And so I ended up getting certified as a nervous system practitioner, focusing on somatic safety in the body. And now that's what I do with my own clients. But to clarify between, our somatic nervous system versus our autonomic nervous system, great question. A lot of times when we think of our autonomic nervous system, we think of our general stress response, right? Fight or flight and or rest and digest. That's what we kind of think about when we think of our nervous system. But there is a somatic nervous system, and that's more of the voluntary responses that our system has. It's movement, it's touch, it's pain, it's tension, it's our senses, essentially. And so when I say somatic, what I really mean is kind of bridging your mind and body. It's really just working with your body, not your mind. A lot of times, and I'm sure you've been there, I have myself, I try to think my way out of absolutely everything. Gets me
Right.
nowhere. I just stay on that hamster wheel, thinking
Yeah.
and thinking and thinking. And ultimately, you've got to work with your body because your body's the one that's holding on to all of these patterns. It's holding on to all of your reactions. It's holding on to all of your fears. And so when you take a somatic approach to your nervous system, it helps to rewire the patterns and reactions that you have, allowing you to show up differently over time. So that's what somatic means, if that clarifies it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that helps a lot for sure. So it sounds like, I mean, it's like regular exercise. What does that look like? Like, is it exercise? Is it yoga? Is it what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, those definitely fall into it. So when I think of somatic, really, you're trying to connect mind and body. So, really, the way I view somatic work is, let's say you have a reaction to something. Let's say your wife says something to you and you just get hit, right? Your nervous system takes a hit and you start to feel all of these sensations within you. And typically, there's an impulse that comes in with those sensations, right? You might start to notice, let's say, a lump in your throat, your chest gets tight, maybe your fists clench up, or maybe you feel a pit in your stomach, whatever it is. You start to notice these sensations. From there, there's a feeling that comes in. So maybe it's anxiety. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's shame. Maybe it's anger, whatever it is. But there's also an impulse that comes through in those moments. Usually, maybe the impulse, if you're more anxiously attached, is to immediately try to fix it. It's like, I want to talk about this instantly. Maybe it's to run away if we're more avoidant,
Yeah.
or maybe we don't know what to do. We just shut down and maybe we want to leave the relationship altogether. There's usually this impulse that we have. Spiraling can also be an impulse. And so bringing in somatic work is bringing awareness to those things. It's creating body awareness. So you want to first become aware of the sensations, not the story. Most people get lost in the story. So it's, oh my gosh, I can't believe they do this to me. Why is this happening? You
Right.
start thinking about everything, right?
Oh, yeah. Been there.
Yeah.
I think
And that's where we really get stuck. So we want to shift from story to sensation because your body's the one that's reacting. The mind is just kind of following the body's lead. And so when you focus more on sensation, you can ask yourself, what am I feeling? What's actually happening in my body right now? And what is the impulse that my body's wanting? Is it to run? Is it to fix? Is it to spiral? And then we want to pattern interrupt there. So we want to bring safety to our system. A lot of times we think we have a mindset problem, right? It's like I have a thinking problem. Maybe I'm just not aware of something and I should think my way through this. But the reality is you have a safety issue. You have a safety problem. Your nervous system doesn't feel safe. It's saying there's a threat here. And when I say threats, I don't mean in terms of like a bear chasing you. Obviously, that's a threat, but
that's a real threat.
yes, it's a real threat, but your nervous system also picks up on other threats like emotional threats, threats of rejection, abandonment, insecurity, failure, things like that. And it picks up on these things based on past stored experiences. It's really holding on to everything. And so we want to be aware of what our nervous system's really picking up on and show it in real time. This moment that we're in is not the same as the past. This is a much different experience, and we're safe in this moment. We can't think our way into that. We can't think our way into safety. We just get stuck on that hamster wheel, like I said, trying to tell ourselves we're safe, but our nervous system, it doesn't speak a cognitive language. It speaks the language of sensation. So what we have to do in these moments of activation is really pair maybe some kind of mantra or some kind of a affirmation, if we want to, with a somatic gesture. This could be breathing, could be placing just a hand on your heart and on your skin and on your chest. This creates regulation. It signals safety to your system. We can feel sunlight on our skin. We can go for a walk. We could shake it out. Shaking it out is really good when we're anxious because anxiety is kind of this buildup of energy, right? And so we got to let it out in a sustainable way. Like I said, breath work is really powerful. Longer exhales signal safety to the system. And so when we pattern interrupt the old response with something new, something somatic, it signals to our nervous system, hey, we're safe. We don't need to react the way that we did in the past. We can show up differently. This does not mean that if you take a couple breaths, your problems are going to be gone. We're not eliminating the emotion. We're just responding to it differently. And that's the key difference.
Interesting. So you're starting at the premise that it's in the body. The body is noticing the problem first, if you will. So by addressing there, we can get the body to kind of get more into that stay in that regulated state before we get too triggered, if you will. And by doing that, obviously we can avoid some problems and some real stress and everything else. How long does it take? Let's say I'm starting to feel anxious, right? It's coming on. And then how long would I have to do the shaking motion or one of these exercises? Is it a couple of minutes? Is it a half an hour? Does it vary?
Yeah, it's absolutely subjective to the person, I would say. I think it would depend on the situation as well. I think it's really just about seeing in your body when you're doing these exercises what allows yourself to just soften, right? If you even notice a 1% shift, that's the progress. A lot of times, especially if we're more geared to anxiety, we tend to have these behaviors of urgency. We're like, I need to go from 0 to 100 real fast, or I need to get rid of this feeling immediately. But we need to approach that differently. We also need to understand that our nervous system loves to go slow. It does not want to be forced. It does not want to rush. It does not want to feel pressure all of the time. So to answer your question, it's definitely subjective. There could be a change within a 1 minute to maybe a half an hour, an hour. It's really going to be dependent on you. It could take a couple days to fully come back to neutrality. So I think it's just about noticing what's happening in your body. And if you notice your thoughts have softened in any way, that's a good sign you're moving in the right direction.
That's awesome. And is it cumulative, like over time, like as you do this and practice this, do you teach your body to, when the stress comes, to be more naturally okay? Or do we have to continue to do this every time that we're dysregulated? You know what I mean?
Yeah, the way I like to explain it is it's like going to the gym, right? The first time you go to the gym, you're not going to walk in there and pick up 100-pound weights if you've never even lifted 10, right? You've got to build your capacity to kind of get to that point. And so you start going to the gym, you start lifting these 10-pound weights, and you're building the muscle, you're strengthening it, and then you get up to 20 and then 30 over time. And then eventually, you get to the 100-pound weights and it's hard, right? But you have more capacity in your system. So it is something that is cumulative. You've got to build that muscle, but the muscle gets stronger over time. And so the way I like to view it too is you're going to start off small first, right? And the way I like to explain this is if you're dealing with a big issue in your life, right, trying to maybe navigate a divorce or something like that, or maybe there's a work stressor, could be about anything. You don't really want to go necessarily tackle those bigger issues right off rip. You want to kind of build up the tolerance for the smaller things in your life first to actually understand how to regulate your system in those bigger moments. So you want to start off with the smaller things like traffic. It sounds so silly,
Right. Yeah,
but
that's a good one. How many people are stressed in traffic for sure?
oh my gosh, too many. A lot of people have road rage and
Yeah,
because of
right.
urgency, right? And
Right.
so if you can learn to just be in discomfort in your body or, just notice your hands on the steering wheel when you're driving, really connect to the present moment. Maybe put on your favorite podcast, put on this podcast,
There you
put on your
go.
favorite song, roll down your window, feel the fresh air on your skin, and just allow your body to kind of soften. It's going to signal safety to your system. It's going to change how you operate the next time around. And you keep building that muscle. Then eventually, when you actually kind of learn how to regulate, you can apply those same techniques in bigger moments in your life. So it is something you build over time, but it is also something you always use over time. I think it does become more natural as time progresses, but it's not something you want to entirely abandon, right? To stay in shape and to maintain abs, you got to keep doing it
Right.
to get them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so just like the gym, right? Once you get into this practice, you want to continue. You build those muscles, if you will, and then you want to continue to work out. You want to continue to to stay strong and stay in shape, so that you keep your body from falling out of shape, and your nervous system, in this case, going back to the old ways, if you will, so the body gets dysregulated again more. So by continuing to practice it, you're saying then that keeps us from really falling back and getting more atrophied, if you will, nervous system, right? Is that sound like right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's repetition. I
Okay.
always like to say the patterns you have today are because you've repeated them so many times. They've kind of become ingrained in mind and body. Another way I love using analogies. So the way I like to think about it too is pretend you're on the top of a mountain and you're skiing or snowboarding. I live in Colorado, so that's what we do now. But pretend you're on the top of a mountain and your brain and your nervous system are the mountain, essentially. And your neural pathways are the slopes you take down the mountain. Let's say you're skiing and you go down one slope and you create a path for yourself. You go in this fresh snow and you create a path. And then the next time around, you get up to the top of the mountain and you're like, do I want to take a new path or should I take the one I've already taken because it's already there? Your brain, it loves the path of least resistance. It's always
Yeah.
going to choose what's familiar, what's easy, and what's safe for you based on past stored experiences. And so it's going to choose that path you already created, even if it no longer serves you. And so it goes down that path and it gets the snow more compact every single time you take it. And when we're regulated, we realize there's a whole mountain here. Why am I taking this path when I can go down the other slope? Right. And so regulation is really when we have more awareness to recognize we can choose a different response. We can choose a different pattern. We can choose a different behavior, and we can create a new neural pathway in the brain, which then creates a new response in our nervous system.
Oh, I love that. Is there a way to tell, like, okay, if I'm anxious, like, is it a particular areas of the body that I start to feel it, like, anxiety's in the stomach or stresses in the chest or something? How does that work? Like right now, if I'm home and I'm listening to this thing and I'm like, I've got some stuff going on with my body. What is that? Or where should I look for that? Right? Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a really good question and a powerful one. So, I do believe our body holds emotions in specific spots.
Right.
It could be different for everyone. I'm not saying this is a one size fits all,
Sure. Sure.
but from my experience on our calls when I work with clients, I'll ask them, I'm like, where do you feel that in your body? Where is this part of you showing up? And a lot of times, if it's a more anxious part, it will be in the stomach. It's going to kind of be in that abdomen gut area. And a lot of times, if there's a lot of grief or, maybe insecurity, that might be more in the throat, might feel like a lump in the throat. Anxiety could also live, let's say, in the chest as well. But I'd say for the most part, where I see most emotions live, the more, let's say, uncomfortable ones, anxiety, grief, shame, and guilt will be in the stomach and or the chest or throat. It's usually in one of these areas.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. So we got to be aware of that as we're starting to go through some of our feelings and emotions. Like, where am I feeling this? Is it the throat? Is it the chest? And then maybe pinpoint that. Do you suggest working this with a program that also retrains the brain a little bit? Because we talk about, the core wounds in the integrated attachment theory program, where we do some different training on the brain subconscious to go from some of the healing. So, instead of being, let's just say I have a fear of abandonment, I want to learn how to train my brain to do that. I would imagine the combination of, yes, starting with some somatic processing, but also training my brain as well. Does it work really great if you do the two, like something like that?
100%.
Yeah.
So when we think about the nervous system, it has patterns, right? And maybe we're not fully conscious of what every single pattern is, but our nervous system gets activated all the time. On any given day, you could go through multiple experiences that trigger you. And our nervous system is always on, let's say, alert to scan for danger or those threats that I mentioned earlier: rejection, failure, abandonment, neglect, things like that. It's always scanning our environment for potential signs of danger. And it does this subconsciously. We don't have to actually think about this. And our nervous system responds to whatever it finds to be dangerous based on past stored experiences. But we also have to ask ourselves, why is my nervous system, how does my nervous system know what's safe for me and what's not? And that's our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind is holding on to a lot of different experiences, right? We have also this part of our subconscious mind called the reticular activating system that filters for evidence in our world to confirm whatever we believe. And our beliefs get reinforced by our nervous system as well. So there's this wonderful, really powerful mind body feedback loop where our nervous system is sending information up to the brain, but our brain is also sending information back down to our body. And they're just constantly communicating. So when you change the body, another way to articulate this is, I mentioned before, our nervous system doesn't speak a cognitive language, it speaks the language of sensation. There is an 80-20 rule with our nervous system. 80% of information is traveling from our body up to our brain. Only 20% is going from our brain to our body, which means when we actually really do work with the body somatically, 80% of those signals are going to go up to the brain, changing how it operates, how it thinks, which then sends new signals back down to our body saying, hey, next time we'll respond a little bit differently to this. We don't have to react in the old ways. We can think differently, feel differently, behave differently. So there's a really powerful mind-body feedback loop.
Wow. This is pretty crazy. I mean, this is powerful, right? Because I think the combination, I didn't realize how much the body is really holding. I know it holds on to stuff, but I didn't realize how much it starts there and how much it really affects. the brain and vice versa. But like, sounds like it's more the body's causing the brain to kind of deal with it that way. Starting there. Wow, that's crazy. So if somebody was dealing with this, let's just say I'm stressed out. I'm like, man, I'm going through some stuff. What would you suggest? Like, how does somebody get started in this type of work, and what kind of programs do you put somebody on if they're like really dealing with this type of stuff?
Yeah, another loaded question.
I like the loaded ones. I want
Yeah.
to know this stuff. I might be a client after this. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
liking
So
this.
it's never a one size fits all. That's the
Sure,
first
of
thing I
course.
like to name. I also really like to name loudly, no part of you needs fixing, right? I think a lot of people, when we're more anxious, more depressed, more insecure, we think some part of us is broken. And I always name loudly, no part of you is broken. Parts of you just don't feel safe, and lots of parts of you are just not working in sync, right? And so the first thing I like to always say is awareness is the first step, right? I think you cannot transcend what you're not aware of. You have to create awareness of whatever your patterns are, whatever your triggers are, whatever experiences you're holding on to. You do need to have awareness, and that starts with the mind. So awareness is what heals the mind, but experience is what heals your nervous system. And so once you start to create awareness in your mind, your subconscious mind, and you start to have more awareness and this conscious awareness of your patterns, you can start to catch yourself in your responses, and you can start to show up differently, and you can start to pattern interrupt, as I mentioned, placing a hand on your heart or taking a few breaths, removing yourself from the situation, whatever it is, to change your nervous system. I think when it comes to this work, most people are looking for that quick fix, and it's not a quick fix, unfortunately. I would love to wave a magic wand and
Yeah,
just make
sure.
everyone's problems go away, but it is something that requires time, consistency, and effort. But I think the first place to start for people is just curiosity. If anyone is dealing with a lot of anxiety, you have to be curious about it. Most people are going to resist it and avoid it like the plague. They're like, I don't want to feel this. I don't like this. And that resistance is what makes it stronger and more amplified. So when you can start to approach it just a little bit differently and just create, let's say, 1 to 5% more curiosity toward it, that's really what's going to start to shift patterns over time. And you can build from there. I'd say that's the best starting point.
Yes. So obviously, when you're dealing with a heartbreak or broken relationships, as we do here, I mean, this sounds like it would be a powerful tool to help somebody kind of navigate that, really begin to change the dynamics of how they're handling breakups. Again, we want to avoid breakups, but at the end of the day, they happen. And when we're in that situation, we want to, kind of get our bodies and our minds as best as we can to kind of, learn from it and learn new approaches that can help us navigate them better, do it better, and keep us from ultimately having breakups. I mean, it sounds to me like, again, a lot of relationships, they don't break up with one fight. It's usually arguments over time and dysregulation over time, and eventually that kind of ends, right, where we just feel like we can't fix it and we give up. But it sounds to me like this type of work, could actually keep you from getting so dysregulated and maybe avoiding some of those fights, and it feels like it could help save some relationships by just doing some of this work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, it's stuff I've had to apply to my own relationship. As I mentioned, I've geared more toward anxious attachment styles throughout my life. And my nervous system has just become super hyper vigilant to any signs of, threat, essentially. So if my partner, if he's, shifts his body language in this, interesting way, or if his tone of voice changes, it's a threat to my system. Oh no, like he's mad, something's wrong. And there's a part of me that jumps to fix it. So I have to catch myself in that moment, because it doesn't matter at the end of the day if he changes his behavior, because ultimately it's my response. And if he's just changing his behavior, it's just fueling my need for control. So we've had to learn to really change how we approach ruptures in our relationship. And I'll be transparent. We used to fight it a lot at the beginning of our connection. Despite that I do this work. I'm human. I still make mistakes. I'm still figuring things out. I always like to say, you're not dating another person. You are dating another living, breathing nervous system. So you guys have to learn to kind of co-regulate together. And so when we would have ruptures in the past, I would jump to fix it, right? I'd jump to immediately try to resolve it because of this sensation of urgency flooding through my veins. I was like, I need to resolve this now because if we don't resolve it now, it will
Right.
never get resolved,
Right.
right?
We don't want to stay in that negative spot where it feels so icky. We want to fix it immediately. Yeah.
Totally. And he's the opposite. He's like, I don't need to talk about this right now. Like, I just need some space, just need some time. And to me, I'm like, again, like, if you don't talk about this right now, and if you don't hear every single thought that I have while I'm absolutely spiraling, like, we're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Can
And
totally
then,
relate. Yeah.
yeah. And when he wouldn't respond to all of my spiraling thoughts, I'd feel even more dismissed because I'm like, you're not responding to every single thought that I have. And eventually, all of my thoughts would never even be about the original issue. They'd be about things that happened like months ago or things that have never happened. And I'd feel so dismissed when he wouldn't respond to all of those thoughts. But honestly, how could he, right? I was a pinball machine.
Right.
And so when we were trying to, repair in quotations our ruptures in our connection, I really, at the end of the day, I didn't care about resolution. I didn't care about repairing. What I wanted was control. And that was a hard truth I had to face. I had to face that hard truth. It slapped me in the face and just hit me like an 18-wheeler when I realized I'm not even trying to repair here. All I want is control. I just want him to show up in the exact ways that my nervous system wants based
Right.
on my past in order for me to feel okay. And
Right.
so when I started regulating more, which is what I had to do. I had to really pattern interrupt that old response. I had to make peace with space, which space was the enemy back in those moments.
Right. Yeah. I feel you. I know I'm the same way. I totally get this.
Yeah. So I had to make peace with space, right? I had to make peace with the fact, okay, we're two different nervous systems. We have two different ways of navigating conflict. And I have to trust that we will come back together once emotions have softened. Because when you talk in an emotional state, which I'm sure we've all been there at some point in time, you're
Absolutely.
not listening to understand the other person. You're listening to win, right? And you're just defending yourself, you're justifying your actions, you're rationalizing your behaviors, or they're doing the same thing. And neither one of you are hearing the other person. You're just kind of talking at each other. You're not talking with one another. So that's where regulation comes in, and both people have to do it. And so this could look like just removing yourself from the situation, taking a few breaths, maybe taking a bath or a warm shower, going for a walk, maybe moving your body, shaking it out. And it could take 5 minutes, it could take a day for you to get to a more neutral place. But then from there, you learn how to communicate better because the emotions have softened and you can start to think about things better. Just to bring up the subconscious mind again a little bit, there are multiple parts of the subconscious mind. I won't go into detail about all of them, but there's a part of the subconscious mind that's more like the regulator of all of them. And this is our prefrontal cortex. So there are 5 parts of our subconscious mind: the amygdala, the hippocampus, the reticular activating system, and our default mode network. And they all create our subconscious mind. Then we have another part called our prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain that's really responsible for logical thinking, decision making, impulse control, and emotional regulation. And in moments of dysregulation or
Mm.
activation in our system, our prefrontal cortex just shuts off. It goes offline. And our amygdala, which is our, let's say, emotional part of the brain, it's a fear
Mhm.
response, it hijacks the prefrontal cortex.
Mm.
So all logic goes out the window. And we
Mm.
just respond based on pure emotion, pure rage, pure anxiety, pure fear.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so this is where regulation really comes in, because when you regulate and you take time to soothe your system, it allows time for signals from your nervous system to come back up to your brain and say, hey, we're actually okay here. And your prefrontal cortex comes back online. You think more clearly, you make better decisions, you regulate your emotions better, and you can communicate better with your partner to actually repair.
Yeah, this is amazing because listen, as you talk about this, it's like I know my wife and I we can get dysregulated, right? So, and the whole idea, like I love what you said. You're not dating another person. You're dating another nervous system,
Yeah.
and that makes a lot of sense because a lot of times it's that emotional trigger. Bodies just kind of clashing. The nervous systems are getting triggered, and you can really set each other off in some bad ways. And it's just like you said, you're fighting for control. I need it this way so that I can get regulated. The other person's fighting their way because that's their pattern. And you can get in some really dysregulated situations. And that's what happens. My wife and I have dealt with this too, because I'm a little more anxious like you, and she's a little bit more like that, like your boyfriend there, like more dismissive. And so our nervous systems are looking for different things. And so when we get into little disagreements or we kind of find ourselves feeling a little unsafe, we react differently. And that until as we learn how to get better with that, before we weren't as good, we really getting into some issues. We're getting better with that. And now we're able to avoid some bigger conflicts, and be able to kind of, regulate a little bit faster and get this. And so we can get into, I love that, the frontal cortex where that's making decisions being hijacked. And so, when we're dysregulated, it's being hijacked. You cannot make rational, good decisions. And that's why I often say, like, yeah, don't do anything when you're dysregulated. You have to get yourself regulated before you really have conversations, and then before you make any like serious decisions, because you're going to make bad decisions when you're dysregulated. And so I love this idea of just like focusing on getting some regulation before you do all this. This fits into a lot of the stuff I love to teach as well. I mean, we're getting closer to the end here, but I just want to ask, like, again, what are like your best clients? What is it, what do you look for as far as like, who do you typically work with? Are you looking, do people like stress at work? Is it just relationships? Is it everything? Is it just anybody who is finding themselves dysregulated with a nervous system that seems like it's overloaded or just off kilter, if you will? Is it just anything, or is it more specifically geared towards a particular group of people that you're working
Yeah, no, great question. I work with really anyone. So I work with people all over the world, from entrepreneurs to people who are going through divorces or breakups, to people who just want to navigate dating differently, to people who just have been through some tough experiences in the last several years that they recognize they have not gotten over yet, and or people who have dealt with a lot of anxiety, panic attacks, depression, things like that. Our nervous system really is the blueprint for our life. It is shaping our entire experience. We don't actually experience the world for what it is. We experience it through the lens of our nervous system. So it's shaping our thoughts, it's shaping our beliefs, it's shaping our perceptions of ourselves and the world around us, our attachment styles. It really shapes every aspect of our life. And so we have to have a good handle on it in order to really change how we show up. And so, this work can really be applied to anyone who's just looking for a shift in how they're showing up in the world. So, yeah,
I just thought of this question. Are you born with this, or is it more like this develops over time, or is it a combination even maybe?
it develops over time, I would
Okay.
say, for
It's
sure.
more through life experiences per se. Is that it?
Yeah, definitely. So if you think of like attachment styles, even so, this is your a nervous system response. The reason you have more of an anxious attachment style is
Mm,
typically because of the experiences you went through as a kid, right? And so the example I always love to give is, let's say you're riding a bike for the very first time. You're like 6, 7, 8. I don't know how old you are when you ride a bike, but let's say you're riding it for the first time, and mom and dad or maybe aren't paying attention, their back is turned, and you fall off your bike, you scrape your knee, you start crying because you're bleeding, and you're young, you're terrified, right? And mom and dad comes over and they're super frantic, and they kind of meet your overwhelm with more overwhelm, which doesn't create space for you to actually be in your emotion. They don't actually hold space for you to be in what you're feeling. And so you learn in that moment, one, a connection essentially creates urgency, or it requires urgency, and also emotions are overwhelming. And so there's a lot of takeaways you could have from that experience, but ultimately that experience kind of stays in your system. Not my best example now that I'm saying it out loud, but I think,
no, I get what you're saying. I understand for sure. So essentially, though, it's not like you're born with this per se. It's more experiences that are developed over time, and then by working through this, we can change the way our nervous system is kind of, handling these issues. But a lot of it's so developed through our childhoods and everything else. So by the time we're adults, yeah, we're on automatic pilot. And until we really begin to do some of this work, sometimes we can stay stuck in these patterns that are really hurtful, and ultimately destroying some of our lives, our situations, and putting us in worse positions because our body's just on automatic, and handling it in ways that are, just detrimental because it wants to get safety. It wants to get safety as fast as possible. And sometimes it does it in the wrong ways, right?
yeah. So with our nervous system too, this is what I should have said to answer your first question.
Okay.
My gears are, just slow.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Trauma is what shapes our nervous system,
Yeah.
right? And what I think people have a very skewed definition as to what trauma is. I think most people think it's this really big event, like a car accident, abuse, neglect of some kind, or anything along those lines. But trauma is really not about the event at all. It's about how your body felt during the event. So if something in your life just felt like it was too much, happened too soon, or it was just too fast and too much for your nervous system to handle, then it stayed in body and mind as trauma. So let's say with the bike example, if you didn't have a caregiver in that moment who was an empathetic witness, someone who could actually hold space for your emotions and be a pillar of safety for you as you went through that fear, then it showed your system then that was an overwhelming event. That was a traumatic experience because you never actually had space to move through that emotion. So then it gets kind of stuck and stored in our system. And, the same thing is true if we don't have the tools to be our own empathetic witness, which most of us don't growing up. We might not even get those tools until we're in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s.
50s like me.
Yeah.
Still working on it.
Yeah. I've had clients in their 70s who are just figuring this stuff out. So trauma is really what does shape our system, and it's learning to just hold space for what you're feeling so that it can pass through. But most of us never learned how to actually respond to our emotions and the experiences we go through. And so it's all of these little experiences over time, no matter how big or small, that shape our system. And it could be as small as like your parent yelling at you or just saying something in the wrong tone that you didn't know how to handle. And then that stayed. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I'll tell you, I love this stuff. I can feel like I could sit here and talk about this all day, but we're going to kind of get towards the end here. Before we do though, I just want to, is there any last words, anything that you would advise anybody that's dealing with this type of stuff? Anything particularly like to say as a last word for people?
Yeah, I would say stop trying to get rid of your emotions. I think half of the issues that people face on this journey is they're trying to make the anxiety stop. They're trying to make the depression stop. They're trying to make the relationship issues stop. But those are all natural parts of life. Our job isn't to control them. It's just to respond differently to them. I always like to compare our emotions to weather, right? I think a lot of times when we have anxiety, it's like I'm an anxious person. We identify as anxiety. We're like, I'm anxious or I'm sad, I'm embarrassed. And we make the emotion an identity. We identify with it and then it becomes us. But if we compare it to weather, right? Let's say there's a dark, gloomy cloud in the sky and it's like thundering and lightning out. There is no part of you that looks into the sky and says, oh, well, I guess this is the weather for the rest of my life. This is what the sky is going to be like forever. No, there's a part of you that knows it's temporary. Same thing is true for your emotions, right? Anxiety, guilt, shame, anger, all of them are just temporary states. And it's a part of being a human. It's a part of the human experience. So I think when you can actually learn to hold space for what you're feeling and let go of the resistance, it allows you to move through it a lot faster. We're not here to eliminate emotions. We're here to respond differently to them. And that is the essence of nervous system regulation.
I love that. That is awesome. That just hit me right there. I'm like, oh my God, I'm listening. That's me. That's me. I love your comparisons. You're like, I love all the comparisons, your stories, the way you compute those together. I love that. Hey, Audrey, we're going to get going soon here, but before we do, how can people find you? How can, if somebody wants to work with you, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, which is www.audreybrothers.com. On TikTok, Substack, and Instagram, my handle is all the same. It's Audrey A. Brothers. And yeah, I have a podcast as well, Advice My Friends Ignored. So people can check me out on all of those platforms.
I love your podcast, and it's one of my favorite named podcasts. Advice My Friends Ignored. Man, if I had them, that's great stuff. I'd like to tell that for my son. Advice I ignored, right? But I love the name of that show, and it's a broad spectrum of different topics you talk about, including relationships and some of the work that you're doing here, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So check out that podcast as well, guys. Thank you so much, Audrey, for joining me today. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Bryan. It's been lovely to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on the My Relationship Fail podcast. Take care, guys.
Thank you for listening to the My Relationship Fail podcast. For more great content, visit www.myrelationshipfell.com. and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at My Relationship Fell. Please be advised, the information presented on this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health provider. Until next week, take care.